believed to be the sole surviving S-boat, S-130. Now let's go and catch up with the owner, Mr. Kevin Wheatcroft. So we're here now with Kevin Wheatcroft. Now, we've known each other, Kevin, for a fair few years now. And of course, everything we've ever dealt with in the past has always been armoured vehicles. The sheer scale of S-130, Kevin, I mean, what possessed you?
It's easy when you're buying from a little photograph, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, my collecting doesn't follow one particular route. It's very much whatever I think is a significant piece that needs to survive. And obviously an S-boat is. It took me years to find the thing, not realising it was the only one left, which I strongly believe it's the only one in existence above the water. And luckily it's in good enough condition that it's relatively simple to salvage. Bearing in mind I want it to operate again as it would have done, as it was designed to do, and create a living piece of history. So it's not just a paintbrush job, it's got to be rebuilt as good as it was the day it was built.
Fantastic. I mean, you did say earlier, 120 tonnes?
120 tonnes when they're laid and ready for sea.
Good heavens.
And 120 foot near enough in length. It's a big vessel. Compared to any of the enemy craft, it was twice the size of PT boats or British MTBs. It's just the whole shape of the thing and the mystery of the S-boat. In a way, it was as important for World War II in naval terms as the U-boat. It was just a bigger threat. So it was always a dream to find one, and then I was lucky enough to hear rumour of the survival of this one, which we then followed through, and I managed to acquire it, which was the easy bit. We want it to do what it was designed to do, not sink things, but to go at the speeds it was designed to go at. So we have to restore it as if it's a race car. You know, it's got to better do what it says on the tin. So we've tracked down original engines. If we're having to make anything new, it's done from original drawings, original pictures, wherever possible, copying everything exactly, because it is going to be a statement in its own right. It's a piece of history, so the only way to do it is to do it right.
I mean, we'll look at some of the engines, I think, later on anyway, but when we look at the sheer scale of what the job is at the moment, and I mean, how many years has this been here now? You've been working on it?
I think, in fairness, it's only about 10 years. Innocently, I brought it thinking it's got to be saved, not fully understanding the pitfalls of owning a 120-foot boat. Building this shed was one cost. Getting it out of the water was a second cost. Then finding all the missing parts, which has took me the best part of that 10 years. But we've tracked down original engines, torpedo tubes, original armoured bridge, gun platforms, all the deck equipment, all the sort of plotting equipment, radios, enigmas, everything down to tea towels and binoculars. Now I realise with a wooden boat, if you're going to restore it, it's got to be part wet and part dry, i.e. sat in water, but covered from the elements. So that opened up another chapter. I then had to find a suitable home, which we've now, after 2 years of searching, located a place in North Devon, Richmond Dock, and a beautiful seaside town called Appledore. We've brought that now, and we're now almost through the planning hoops with a view of starting work in the next 2 months, ideally, and then we've got some of the summer left. So what we're creating is something that still looks like an 1830s shipyard from the outside, but from the inside, you will step into a World War II U-boat pen.
Wow.
So it's not just the boat. We've got our submarine collection. We've got trucks, cranes, torpedoes, spare engines, mines, depth charges. So we can decorate this U-boat pen almost as it would have been at the time. So from stepping in the front door, you're going back in time, let alone stepping aboard the boat, which will be done on an equal level. hence it's taken so long to get all that detail together. But it's had to build the home before we built the before we rebuilt the boat. That's why it's took so long.
So Kevin, absolutely love the room we're in at the moment. We're surrounded by diagrams, schematics. I mean, was it quite hard to get hold of all this information?
Some easier than others. I mean, basically we trawled through any archive anywhere on naval craft and just copied anything we could get our hands on. We brought every book we could find. I was immensely lucky in the family Schlichting, who built the craft in the first place, were incredibly helpful and pointed me to a number of archivists that could help me out. So as a consequence, we've got drawings of everything from the teapot to the engine. So we can double check every detail. With S-130 it's slightly more difficult because it's one of only 10 boats built as an interim from the early model to the late war model. So it encompassed a number of early and late features, which made my job twice as difficult in finding parts. But that wasn't known at the time. Had it have been, would it have made any difference? Probably not. The thing needed to survive. It's just another one of those hurdles that you've got to overcome.
I mean, you're known for a perfectionist. I mean, I know from your military vehicles, you like things to be 100% correct.
Yeah, I think actually, financially, which is, you know, a big part of it, is to do it right or to do it to look right, there isn't that much difference. Yeah. So if you build something that you want to last for as long as it's already been here, I've got an obligation. I have to do it right, otherwise it doesn't outlive me. And you know, with all this collecting, it's yeah, you own it and you get the pleasure from it, but what you're really doing is investing in future generations so that thing survives and people can experience what they looked, felt and smelt like. One of the cross-section drawings here shows actually ideally what we were missing when we brought S-130. I was busy trying to find remains of other boats, and I heard a story where 5 were chained together and sunk on May the 8th, 45 in Danish waters. Well, long story short, we supplied some vintage cars for one of the royal weddings in Denmark. They owed me a favour, and that favour transpired being permission to dive on these wrecks. The one we dived on, unknown at the time, was exactly the same model as S-130, and I was given the option to lift the boat or take off the boat, whatever I needed. So from that dive, which was basically 48-hour turnaround, one crew member after another, we found a matched set of 3 torpedoes for this Mercedes-Benz engine that we have. We also found all 3 of the deck weapon platforms, the complete armoured bridge, complete pair of torpedo tubes with their doors, 3 inert torpedoes, and a number of other parts. So overnight, or over a 48-hour dive period, we pretty well found everything we needed to complete this craft.
So Kevin, the engine side of it, and again, I'm pretty much blown away by this. I have to say, I didn't appreciate. So 3 of these for S-130.
Yeah, three engines. So you've got your standard port and starboard engine. Then you have a centerline engine, all the same identical specification. The Mercedes V20s producing around 3,000 horsepower each, supercharged. The nice thing about this engine, it's such a good engine, it was still in use all over the world into the 80s, and I can ring a Mercedes marine agent and still buy filters, pistons, shells. So they're an easy engine to maintain. But what's most important, these are all wartime engines. We have 6 engines, so there'll be 3 restored for the boat, 3 were restored for static exhibition within our museum, but they're ready for a change should the boat ever need, you know, an engine swap.
I can imagine that as soon as you say Mercedes, reliability.
Yeah, build quality and reliability, and truly so in this case, because the fact that they've been used for so many years is proof of how good they were.
We talked briefly about the exterior, that's one thing, but what about the interior? I mean, how was S130 when you got it? Was there still a lot interior? Or
there was more than we first thought. The biggest problem was deciphering what was wartime and what was post-war, as this vessel had been used as a sort of a platform to test various engines in its post-war role. Obviously, many things have changed. So we binned everything that was post-war and kept and have continued to search for whatever's missing to bring it up to correct wartime specs. So we have all the engine management
rackfuls here.
Yeah, I mean and this is only 50% of it, but there's all the valve systems, the engine pulley lift systems, which obviously the engine room had to be a workshop. You should be able to lift the cylinder heads off in situ and work on the engines at sea. So they were a fully functioning workshop as well. These are basically the dashboard, so there'll be one for each engine, which give you all, forward and reverse, revs in each gear, oil pressures, engine running temperatures, all your fuse boards, just like a modern car really, but on a far bigger scale. Cabin heaters, this is all the central lubrication system for the shafts. They were quite advanced, and the idea was make as many of the systems mechanised so that one man could do a number of jobs to keep the crew levels down, because these could carry up a crew of up to 36, depending on whatever mission it was out on. So the more jobs that could be doubled up, the less it meant, the less crew on board and more room for fuel and ammunition, basically.
Is there a search for anything in particular still, or do you think you're pretty happy with what you got?
I think until we start putting it together, I'm not 100% sure. But things I know we're missing is the main steering box, the triple throttle body that's up in the cockpit, and of all things, the cooker out of the ship's galley. I'm sure all will turn up, but it's part of the fun of it, really. Each find brings with it its own stories. And I have to admit, whilst it's hard work, it's a lot of fun as well, because it's the people you meet along the way and the stories, and all adds to the overall history of saving this craft.
And worst case scenario, there is something you can't source anywhere. I mean, is it possible to rebuild it?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's impossible. It's just cost, really. We try to keep reproduction parts to a minimum, but of course there are cases when you have to. But if that is the case, then we try and follow the original spec as faithfully as possible.
So here we are now on the deck of S130, and again, Kevin, I think it gives you, it was certainly for me, it gives an appreciation of the sheer scope of the vessel. I mean, it's incredible, really, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a big old girl.
Now, talking about weaponry that was on here, behind us.
Well, that's the important bit, yeah. They would carry a complement of 6 torpedoes, 2 in the tubes, and then 2 behind each tube on rails. So they were like little train rails to take the torpedoes forward and winched up and into the tube itself to make life easier. And they usually would try and keep them balanced. 2 were fired, 2 would be reloaded. Here you had ammunition storage, mines, depth charges in these 2 rooms. And on the back there was a socket which was adaptable for 2 centimetre flak, single, double, quadruple, or the 3.7 naval cannon. Midships there would be another 2 centimetre mounted there, where the original mount is still in, and then another 2 centimetre forward.
And would these be half the source, or have you got them already? Or?
I was lucky enough to find all the weapons brand new in Finland some years ago. So we've got a full complement of weapons and spare barrels and equipment, all the stowage boxes. And then in Norway, about 3 years ago, I found a stock of new old stock torpedoes, believe it or not, with spare warheads, engines, all the tools and equipment, a full complement of mines and depth charges. So this vessel has sufficient to load it completely with original equipment.
These look pristine though, Kevin. I mean, I'll be honest, first time I saw them, I thought, oh, they're just replicas or something. Or...
No, they are pristine because they've just not done anything. They've been in storage since the day they were built. and maintained by the Norwegian Navy, as the Type 7 was a torpedo they wanted to continue using after the war. And Norway had U-boats until 1968, so there was a very real need. And I suppose it's one of those things that got left in the stores, and luckily I found it.
Now, the whole project itself, Kevin, I mean, obviously there's a lot to do. Have you got any sort of time frame in mind, or is it not something you really want to think about?
I think literally as we leave here, we want to start to get the engines underway, get all 6 rebuilt, do the prop shafts, the rudders. That gives me some progress forward whilst we renovate the new home for S-130, as I mentioned earlier, in Devon. And at that point, when we have a completion date, we'll start the restoration of the boat. So the boat can go out and do its sea trials and then come home to Devon, and it's in its own home then. So in the water, which it's meant to be as a wooden boat, but undercover to keep it safe and keep the weather off the decks.
Fantastic. Kevin, firstly, thank you so much for taking time out and allowing us to see this incredible project which you've taken on. And all I can say is, from all of us that, you know, who love history, thank you so much for doing what you do.
Been a pleasure.